Hi everybody. Yeah, thanks FoT. FoT and I go way back. We met yesterday, I think. Not really yesterday. He sent me a message on Twitter saying, "Do you want to come to this thing?" I said, "Okay." So here I am. Very nice to meet you all. I'm a designer and filmmaker. I'm based in London, East London. And I'm just going to show you, I guess, some projects which I think resonate a lot with what I've heard so far from this event. People are interested in. My background is in architecture. And I got very interested about the possibilities for space of being able to create new types of environment that were composites of physical and virtual. So I was very excited to find out about augmented reality because it made me think that there is this kind of way of bridging my interest in physical spaces with people and face-to-face communications, but also being able to draw possibilities from the virtual world as well. So I've got like kind of two themes, I guess, I want to talk about. The first one is another hyper X. I didn't bring I didn't take this phrase from hypertext or hypermedia. It really comes from Baudrillard, but obviously it's very relevant to a lot of the work I'm doing. I'm just going to play some of my works and my films in the background. This is way back in 2009 when I started to think about what are the possibilities of physical and virtual together. I'm sorry it's stuttering so much. And started to think about the possibility of media escaping from these 2D surfaces and starting to form environments, information environments that could be navigable, could be interactive, could be very mutable. I've got the obligatory air keyboard in there as well. It's 2009, so that was first time I was thinking about any of this stuff, and you'll see I quickly move on from those ideas. But yeah, just this idea as well that we could layer on top of our space. We could actually even replace our physical environments with virtual ones and start to think about space not only as a place for us to exist in, but also for us to consume as a form of media. I kept on with this kind of train of thought, trying to think about who creates that media. If it's a position where we have this edit button for everything, and we're able to have this fully plastic reality, who is allowed to do things in the space. And I was very excited as an architecture student in that time that it wouldn't just be architects and planners and developers who are responsible for defining our spaces, but it could actually be the people who exist in those spaces. They could leave their own trace. They could broadcast imagery about themselves into that space, and the fact that we're all here at this moment could be meaningful for the way that we perceive this environment as well. In the same way that everyone is putting their slides in the screen, there's a possibility for that information to be held in the very physical space that we're in. I followed that up in 2016 with this film, Hyperreality, which I guess sort of takes that to the next level and tries to imagine what that looks like in this kind of urbanist perspective, where people are responsible for being able to maintain and share that digital content. So here you can see that this is shot in Medellin, Colombia, and each of these little shops has their own virtual presence in the world. There are municipal layers, there are fully personalized layers. And I was very interested in thinking about that app model where you have this scarce space that can be accessed and created by many different people. And how does that work? And of course, I think in these films you've seen so far, these are not commercially funded films. I was able to put a critical eye on those things and try and sort of just extrapolate. If we continue with the same business models and kind of extractive uses of technology, what's the kind of logical conclusion for that? So in a way, these are kind of provocations, trying to make people think a little bit about what kind of future are they trying to create? Why are people using these technologies? And yeah, this is a film from 2017 looking more into virtual reality and artificial intelligence. And I was very interested that, I started with, one screen in front of me, and then I bought another screen, and I had my laptop and then another screen. And I thought at some point, we're actually going to dive into the screen and we're going to create this very pure information environment. So this is a film about the future of work. Actually, it's a 360 film that you can watch in a headset or pan around. But it proposes many different types of these information environments, which can be for productivity or for understanding data sets. And our character here is trying to understand this unknowable AI. I mean, these all have narrative. I'm just showing you little glimpses of them. And then we got the chance last year to be able to really build this for real. I mean, I was working in 2009, 2010 as a student to try and just visualize through computer graphics and just conventional, CGI techniques, what that could look like. But now, of course, these things are fully realizable. So in last year, we built this installation for Niantic, the makers of Pokemon Go, to overlay their entire conference venue with these like virtual layers that you could browse and navigate. So I think here we really try to look into the utility of what happens if you could put the conference agenda up in the sky. You could be able to follow the thread of what conference is on now to get to the room you want. We can tag landmarks. We can tag what kind of the provenance of your tea and coffee, and really trying to dig down into those use cases. Here we don't touch so much on the extractive business model side of it. And yeah, I think that's really this preoccupation that I've had for over a decade now, is trying to understand what is that connection between the physical and virtual spaces and these information environments. But the second strand I wanted to talk about is agents, which is somewhat new. I started kind of thinking about this in 2016, and really just recently put out my latest film about that. But this is just an example of some of the prototyping work I was doing while I was at Leap Motion. And again, here, this is really in the hyperreality mode of things, trying to think about how can we think about new forms of interaction modalities? What can we do to be able to sort of imagine ways of being able to interface with the world around us, so it's not just consumption, but there's also a way of being able to modulate, control, and contribute to those worlds as well. So these are kind of just tests, I guess, to show like what happens if your body becomes a form of interface, and there's a lot more like this as well. But I think the realization I had with this was similar to the virtual keyboard case, which is that I don't necessarily want to be in this space, like looking at these things, or like touching air, and maybe the paradigm of buttons and text surfaces, although it has many usable applications, I don't know if I am fully convinced myself that that's the future of how we interact with computers and the space around us. So I started to become much more interested in the possibilities of conversational UI. And I made this film recently. It just came out a month ago, I think, called Agents, which is a narrative film. Again, it's going back to the roots of just faking it as a film. But here we try to imagine that we have these artificial intelligence agents which coexist within your shared world and can have different functionalities. They can be made by different people. They can have different capabilities. Some can be very smart. Some can be very stupid. Some might be benevolent and fully aligned with your interests. Others might have the interests of a corporation or a brand or something else. So I was very interested, I guess, here about just what you can, how you could go away from that model where we have the kind of super intelligent, omniscient, omnipresent AI that decides everything for me.
It seems to be frozen.
Oh, okay. I think I just got to the end of that little clip, but I'll go back. Yeah. But what happens before then, and even then, like, is that even a desirable state that I would want to just give up all of my data and everything, all of the knowledge that these systems are getting? Am I going to want to give that to one particular entity? So this, instead of the kind of monotheistic model of Siri or Alexa, proposes more of an animist model for interaction with artificial intelligence, and we built that into a prototype called Wall. Wall is running on an LLM, and just basically you can, Wall will come into your space. You can visit Wall on your headset or on your phone and ask questions about the forest. And Wall has a very strong domain expertise as well as kind of a sense of character to hopefully make that learning experience, rather than being this passive thing that you just sit down and listen, something that kind of forces you to engage your curiosity about as well. So I hope these projects are interesting as a provocation. Yeah, that's what I've got.
Much more than interesting. Thank you. Just before questions, yeah, you come up. I just want to point out that what we saw now is real, but of course it's completely fake, right? So how fascinating is that? It's like another meta layer of fantastic. Please.
So actually, the first thing is I wanted to thank you, because I've been using the hyper-reality video as an example of where this technology could go for at least 5 years now. So it's fabulous to meet you. It's a wonderful piece of work.
Thank you.
There's if you watch it, there's a bit at the end where the person gets their identity stolen, and they have to do a swipe in the shape of a cross to rejoin Catholicism, which I thought was absolutely marvelous. Well done. But what I was going to ask was, I've actually been using it as a warning. So I use it. I've been interested in the ethics of these hybrid spaces and thinking about, going back to the idea of the edit button and those kind of elements. And this came up in that earlier discussion about, well, who has permission to do these things? And I think that's a wonderful example of what happens when we corporatize our space and where we have people coming into our personal spaces and our interaction spaces in a way. And that's kind of what that video communicates. So first of all, I wanted to ask, to what extent is that your intention with your work? And also, what sorts of reactions have you had in those kind of veins when you've shown your work to people?
Yeah, I tried to kind of steer away from making it something which is either a utopian, this is the vision, you should all do it, or the dystopian vision, which is sort of the same in a way. I find it was more interesting and got more interesting responses from, and provoked my curiosity more, when you try to show something that just feels not like what you think it should be, but what it is likely to be, or, if we kind of follow the existing trends or currents, what that leads to, what's in people's mind. And for me, as a designer and filmmaker, it's very natural and easy for me to just make that jump without having to think, what have we currently got and how can we change one thing, to be able to just put yourself in that world and to build a whole world around it, and then to be able to step back from that and ask, is that a world that, is that what you're trying to do? Is this what you're trying to achieve with all of that billions of dollars put into it? And if not, then what is it? And if it is, then is that what we want? And I think for me that then design and prototyping becomes a very valuable tool to be able to ask that question and understand a little bit about that space before you make that $1 billion bet.
Yeah.
So I think, that's, I guess, the first, in terms of my intention, is really around being a provocation and not so interested in terms of actually my perspective. I don't really want to force that on anybody. But on the other side, in terms of the impact it's had, I mean, that film has, it has got me into lots of interesting rooms like this one, allowed me to have lots of very interesting conversations, and hopefully as well, as you said, you're sharing with your students, hopefully it's allowed other people into those ideas as well. So I still think that filmmaking and this kind of speculative design is still a very powerful tool for being able to just get people to engage with it on a very tangible and almost like a visceral level.
Yeah.
Like people have a reaction which is not just an intellectual one, right? They're like, oh. Or sometimes they're like, I know how to build that. We're going to make $1 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd encourage people to watch them. They are incredibly provocative and really
Rebecca
very lucid.
hade scoutmöte och då kom en av ledarbarnen i tid.
I'm guessing that's Adam, the only Swede. Can you mute Adam, please?
So thank you very much.
Thank you. There we go. I can mute.
Sorry.
All right.
Yes, it's muted.
I have no authority here, Adam.
Yeah, we're going to go Brandel and then see someone else. Somebody mentioned space. I think it was you just now, Dave. The question then becomes, what is a space? Because if you're walking down the same street as me, two different headset environments, it'll be two different spaces in a way. So what's a space?
We've done, I've been thinking about this problem a lot. I start to think about it as subjective space. The idea that two people with a different set of filters or different devices could have two different experiences of the same environment. And there are different ways to slice that, right? We could imagine that everybody lives in their own bubble of reality and everyone has a completely different set of things that they see. We can also go the other way and imagine that everyone sees the same thing and there's no ability to hide, the thing. So basically we just treat it in the same way as a physical reality. Both of those have their like pros and cons, but I think, again, when we were talking in, is it Fabien? Sorry. Yeah. And your talk around, I asked about the politics of it. How do you decide who has the permission to do that? As soon as we enter into any situation which is shared, or if it allows any person to control what you see in that space, it instantly becomes political. Who is allowed to edit? Who is allowed to enter that space? Who's allowed to see that space? And not only does that bring all of the political problems that we've had with the use of space until now, and maybe people argue we just use those same conventions, and it's like, I own this land, therefore I should own the space. Either way, you are excluding people. So having a way, I think that the design of those kind of shared, if we're talking about kind of shared computing systems, which I sort of feel like most of us are here, then I think need to engage with those political issues very head on and try and decide, actually, not, it might be like this, but how do we want it to be? And we can use design and visualization as a way of testing it.
We need to go over to Brandel, I think.
Okay, Brandel, I heard you invited me, so thank you.
You're quite welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really intrigued by what you were saying about your sort of withdrawal from the sort of instrumental use of technology and toward the agentive. Is that more motivated by a recognition that the instrumentality of buttons and switches and tabs is difficult, and to try to absolve oneself of responsibility of those things, or to do with a particular confidence or desire for the more agentically mediated things, and what you've actually seen in practice in terms of the capabilities that you get from it? Is it leaving one, or is it moving toward the other?
Yeah, I think it is difficult. I think the instrument model is very compelling and has lots of very practical use cases, but I think for designer, we try to like find kind of conceptual models that are as low level as possible, trying to find the most kind of natural interactions. And whenever we've seen great advances in computing, they've often been tied to the way that we engage with those technologies, the interfaces that we use. So when we move from punch cards to command line to GUIs to mobile, each time we've actually opened up greatly like what we expect from that technology and what we think it can do. So in this case, where we're entering this new realm and there's this other step change in it, it feels as well that it deserves a new, greatly kind of simpler and more human way of interacting. And this idea of I guess you can talk about it as kind of utilizing natural language processing and it being a conversational UI, but I also like to think of it as communing with gods as well. The idea that if I want to go somewhere, I can pray to the god of travel, and the god of travel will come to me and take me where I want to go based on what it knows about me as well. So it's really, yeah, I think the real it's really just the age-old things of it's simple to use, simple to understand, that we already have strong mental model for what it should do, time to task, all that kind of stuff. But maybe it's not in isolation, but I guess hyperreality was such a thing that people kind of used as a model of what the future could look like. I wanted to show something that was just a completely different route to that.
Can I ask the next question?
Sure.
Hang on, what did I miss?
No, I'm just getting my close up. That's all.
Oh, I am what I missed. Okay. Okay. Right. You had.
Oh yeah, a small question.
Okay, and then we're over to the next presentation. Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions. First question: can you make a picture with me together?
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Just look normal.
Yes.
So
I'm interested.
the question is basically, in your last movie, there were these small beings or helpers or assistants or agents.
Agents, yeah.
Yeah, I have seen them, and I first of all, I'm a huge fan. I did not know that you actually made those pictures. Like also these like starting from the supermarket movie. I think I've watched it so many times.
Oh, great.
And it inspired, I will tell you later all about it. It inspired a lot of stuff. But anyways, this last video of you was quite emotional. Like when it was sort of like ending, I had a mix of emotions there. And one of them was very personal because well, this is a spoiler alert perhaps, but there is this guy who has some kind of, it almost seems like he has some kind of super paid version, which is one agent which can do everything.
Right.
And it's almost a bit intimidating to the girl who has all this whole sort of almost a zoo of agents. And she was also having sort of mixed feelings, like, whoa, what, like he was like sort of like, oh, it's so easy. Look, why are you so you're making it way too difficult for yourself. Could you maybe tell a bit more about this emotional roller coaster.
Well, I mean, when you're making a film, it's, you want to have a narrative that allows you to be able to address the core issue that you're interested in through the interaction of characters. And for me in this film, the core issue was one versus many. Do you have one agent that is able to kind of crunch all of your data, take everything from you and serve you up a lifestyle or a way of doing things that is in line with, the values of corporation X, not that one, but in general, or do you want to promote a model where people can become producers as well as consumers? And so I think the character that you mentioned, the guy who has the one agent, is kind of representative of the blind faithful, evangelist of the one God, whereas the other character, Maya, the girl, she lives in this pantheist world and she creates agents as well, and it's more of a community. And so I think, yeah, it's not so subtle, but that's
On that
the
note, thank
theme.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this is why we have dinner, so we can continue this. Okay, are you ready online?
I'm ready, yes.
Yes, we do Kevin first and then me because Kevin has to leave earlier than I.
Okay, you have permission to share screen, I believe. Everyone should be able to do that.
Yes, I will try.
And please do a brief introduction for those who are not online, who haven't followed maybe everything you've said.
Of course. All right, can everyone see my screen and can hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So let me start the presentation. All right, good.